Hello, my name is Ann Whitehurst, and I'm here to tell you the story of my father, Captain Joel Albert Whitehurst. My father was born 15 years after the Wright brothers' historic first flight. He was enthralled by aircraft from the time he could point to the sky and say, "Aeroplane." At 6 years old, he could identify any plane he saw in the sky, any year, model, any make, and he surprised all the adults. How did he know that stuff? He directed his whole youth towards becoming a pilot and achieved that goal, flying big planes for the 442nd Carrier Division on the European front for most of World War II. Dad didn't say much about his service career until his last few years on this earth. He finally did open up and told me amazing stories. One time my dad told me about how in his division, 27 planes flew out to drop troops on Normandy on D-Day. Of all those planes, only one made it back that night, Dad's. He also told me that during the course of the war, the Germans had figured out right where to shoot planes so that the bullet would penetrate the armor and go right up the pilot's spine. One day they installed an iron shield on the bottom of Dad's pilot seat in his plane. The next day, his plane was hit in the belly and Dad felt an awful pain in his backside. He thought he was hit and bleeding and wouldn't look down, wanting to finish the mission. When he completed the mission, Dad realized that the armor shielding had saved his life as the bullet only managed to dent his seat and bruise his back. Later in the war, my dad became responsible for transporting big-name generals, including Patton, all over Europe. In this role, Dad was able to be one of the first soldiers to enter the German concentration camps. He described the unnerving juxtaposition of live skeletons grinning and cheering when the Allies came to free them. After the war, Dad told me that he was the pilot who flew the Nazi war criminals to the Nuremberg trials. He described his long trip with Goering, his dialogues with Goebbels, and exchanges with others of Hitler's inner circle, like Hess, commenting on how surreal it felt to politely discuss academic topics with Hitler's second-in-command. He said he'd never know Goering was capable of such heinous acts. He seemed so unthreatening. Dad said it was kind of sickening that this nice-seeming man was responsible for such atrocities and on such a monumental scale. On one trip home, Dad stopped in to say hello to the local doctor, Dr. Hillier. Behind the counter was Cecilia Carano, a girl who he knew as the organist at church, but who had grown up quite impressively. She was gorgeous. He couldn't take his eyes off of her during his short visit with the doctor, and on his way out, Dad said, "Remind me to come back and marry you when this war is over." And he did. They had 4 children, Joel Jr., Anthony, Anne, that's me, Alfred, and 9 grandchildren, Teresa, Aaron, Logan, Emily, Elliot, Alex, Matthew, Evan, and Adam. After the war, Dad returned to the family business, Whitehurst Chapels. He always had at least one plane, and flying was always his haven. He was a spectacular father. We were always his priority. He and my mom provided a tough act to follow as far as married couples go. They were wonderful. In Dad's final years, he would fish in Alaska for 3 weeks every summer. He loved this. He loved to play music. My best memories are of our whole family playing together in the living room. Dad and I played music almost daily in his last 3 years. He played the concertina most of the time, but he could also play piano and harmonica. He could coax a fine tune out of a flute, too. An amazing guy, incredibly humble. Dad was a great father and a great man. He never once took the low road, no matter how much the low road might benefit him. He shunned attention, playing down his experiences and accomplishments. He said he didn't want to bore people with his war stories. I'm deeply honored to have been the only one to hear many of them. I'm more honored to be his daughter. I think of him every day. His profound and loving spirit will always light the pathway of my life. The apple tree